Tonight's episode of the 31st Lap Podcast is brought to you by DirtTrackDigest.com. If it's on dirt, it's on Dirt Track Digest.
This is the 31st Lap Podcast, recorded live in the studios of FingerLakes1.com in downtown Seneca Falls, New York. And now, your hosts, Chris Marquardt.
Good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to episode number 215 of the 31st Lap. It has been a little while since we've been on the air. And inadvertently ended up taking all the month of November off, and a lot of action that was packed in the course of that month. We'll talk a little bit about that. We're going to be catching up with Mike Warren from Race Pro Weekly. A couple of headlines just to hit on. Jimmie Johnson, he won the championship with NASCAR. That was wrapped up. Matt Shepard was finally recognized officially at the year-end banquet with Dirt Car. Dirt Car is going to be heading back to Plattsburgh, going to head to the Airborne Speedway next year. Wall Turkey Derby was over that break. Gary Blue, Paul Jensen, Billy Greco, among those being inducted into the New York State Stock Car Association Hall of Fame coming up in next month. Happy December to everybody. Hope everyone had a wonderful Thanksgiving. Again, we were on a little bit of an impromptu hiatus. We ended up going with Crash Course out to Topeka, Kansas for Blizzard Bash. We did a couple live events with Final Round Drag Racing Podcast, which the momentum with that has been astounding. We appreciate all the listeners that have been sharing time between the Circle Track fan base and our straight line race fans and letting us put a little bit of extra different coverage here on Finger Lakes One. Again, I'm Chris Marquardt with the 31st Lap, coming to you live from FingerLakes1.com studios in Seneca Falls. The one and only Mike Warren joining us here. We're going to get into some of those headlines after we wrap up our conversation with Mike, but Mike has been very, very busy, very active with Race Pro Weekly, the host of their TV show, which is getting ready to relaunch coming up next March. I guess that's probably, Mike, the best place to jump off and start our conversation right there is that TV show went over well. The Race Pro Weekly family coming together and putting none above the betterment of Race Pro Weekly, and the show's going to be back on coming up in the spring.
That's right. It's one of those shows, just a lot of fun to do, and I think one of the best parts about it, I know the fans get to see all the tracks from in the area that we get on the show each and every week, but the coolest thing is to get those tracks, because I'm in Albany, Saratoga, and Lebanon Valley each and every week, so I don't get to see Maryville until I get the footage, and some of the racing just all over the Northeast is unbelievable, and I'm glad I get to bring that to the fans. Right.
Yeah. How'd you come up with the job to be the host of that show?
Well, Bobby Chalmers, who is the head guy for Race Pro Weekly, him and I had a couple of conversations, I want to say 4 or 5 years back now, and wanted to get something started. We kind of took it from a local show that we used to have in the Albany area on one of the news stations, Fox 23 Fast Track, and it kind of just evolved into that, bringing it to an internet show. And I'm one of the announcers out at Lebanon Valley, so it was just an easy fit having a guy that could talk over the air and not really, stumble too much, I say. But it just seemed to be, it was an easy fit for us, and it seemed to push us right in the right direction right away.
And then slowly but surely it started to gain more and more. How hard was it to get that network together to where that footage was coming to you on a regular basis and you had regular highlights to put together?
It's a struggle each and every week, no question about it, because you never know when the footage is going to come in, and it gets harder when you get the midweek shows coming in some places. Like Maryville, for example, a weekly show, we seem to have that right away, but there's some tracks that, hey, we're waiting for stuff to get going. We hope we get them on time. Sometimes we don't have them in the show, but we look to try to get everything every week. And usually the relationship between us and everybody involved with the team is big, and it's great, and that helps us out each and every time.
I'm guessing it's probably not just as simple as you showing up with a microphone, going to the makeup trailer, and coming on to talk about the racing. How involved are you in the actual editing process and prepping the shows?
Well, it comes to me already somewhat edited with highlights of what goes on with the race, and I go through, I almost don't even use a script at times. I just kind of go through off the wall with a highlight at first. There's, I make a mistake, I go back through and do it again.
Right.
But it's not the easiest thing in the world, and it does get very time-consuming for each of us on end. I know it takes a good 2 days at best, and that's the least amount of time usually that it takes to get the show done. There's sometimes we're, just waiting for footage because it just happens that way until the end of the day Wednesday, and we're pushing to get the show out by 6 p.m. on Thursday night.
Wow. I mean, that's That's that Saturday Night Live almost kind of feel where you're cramming all week to get the thing together, and then you finally do it, and then just in time to catch your breath for a minute, it's time to start all over again, because by the time you go on the air Thursday, Friday night races are about ready to start.
Absolutely. It's definitely a quick turnaround, but helps set us up for the next week a little bit easier, so it's almost like it never stops.
Does it ever stop? I mean, we're talking about relaunching something that's coming up in March. We just wrapped up the Turkey Derby over the Thanksgiving weekend. We've got more indoor racing that's going to be coming up here in the next several months. It doesn't seem like it ever really stops anymore. There is no off season.
No, you're absolutely right. I know for me, I'm heavily involved with hockey and basketball as well, so I kind of get a bit of an off season, but I really don't get a break from one to the other either, and it seems like when the other two end, it starts right back up again, and opening night comes right around the corner.
What do you do with hockey?
I'm currently an in-game arena host for the Albany Devils.
Yes.
Right now.
Yes.
A lot of fun working with them. It's cool seeing guys that are going to be in the NHL shortly, 38 times a year, and it's just a lot of fun to get to, hey, you get paid to watch professional hockey. You can't really go wrong there.
Right. We're big hockey fans. My boy Alan and my wife they love the Sabres. I've been a Chicago Blackhawks fan since the mid '90s, and being where we live here in the Finger Lakes, we get up to the Amherst game in Amherst quite a bit to see Rochester play.
Yeah, we just had them in town less than a week ago. It's fun to see two teams that have been around for so long keep playing against each other all the time. And I love the history of the Americans more than anything.
The background in hockey leads me a little bit to the background in racing thing. How did you get involved in motorsports to start with? I mean, having the microphone and being one of the main guys at Lebanon Valley, that's a pretty special position, but it's not something that just falls into your lap.
No, it's not. And, I got started in motorsports in general. My family's been involved with it for many years beforehand. My uncle's crew chief for some of the best drivers in the Northeast, even before I was born. Kenny Tremont, Stuart Friesen, Brett Hearn at one time, now with Mark Johnson right now. So he's been around and helped get me into the game a little bit more. And then I was a broadcasting major at Plattsburgh and was doing an internship in the area when I just got asked to announce one night. One thing led to another at Lebanon, and now I'm there in Albany, Saratoga.
You got such a nice spot there. Do you ever realize how awesome it is to be at that track week in and week out?
Absolutely. I mean,
yeah.
It's Lebanon Valley is home to me, no question about it. I mean, it's just something about seeing. It was a little weird at first, seeing guys you used to cheer on when you were 5, 6 years old, and all of a sudden you're announcing them going around the speedway.
Right.
But once it caught up, it really picked up, and it's like, wow, this is a position I never thought I'd have in a million years, and just the fact that I get to do this every week is it's fun more than anything.
So with racing and with hockey, do you have a full-time job outside of this, or are you just running your butt off all the time?
Pretty much working my butt off all the time in every aspect right now. I mean, still looking for an elusive full-time job. Unfortunately, just things don't fall your way as much as you'd like to. But it seems like I never get a day off, which is never a bad thing.
Right. You have all the time in the world, but every second's accounted for.
Exactly.
Have you given any thought to picking up something else in addition to Lebanon Valley with Saturday night? What are you doing Fridays? What are you doing Sundays? Have you talked to any tours or anything like that?
On Friday nights, I'm at Lebanon Valley Sister Track, Albany, Saratoga as well.
Okay.
Announcing there, and you got some of the best coming in there every Friday night as well in what is a stellar Friday night field. And then I'm also the announcer for the King of Dirt series that just got started up a couple of years ago with the Sportsman and Pro Stock deal, because I like those support classes just as much as I like the modifieds as well.
Do you have a favorite division, so to say? I mean, we get to see 410 sprint cars over there at Lebanon Valley. We've seen the late models there in the past. There's such a great area with regional series, with local series that move in and out of there. Is there a particular division that you like watching?
I mean, the big blocks, as much as I love the support series, are still going to be number one to me. It's just the way it's always been. But I love coming in and seeing the 410 sprint cars come around. And I mean, I know we made the switch from the World of Outlaws to the Tony Stewart series this year. And, seeing those 410s and getting to interview Tony Stewart on the same night, it's just something you'd never expect.
Yeah, I can see where that would be one of those pinch me moments.
Definitely. But I think the reason I like the sprint cars so much is because they only come in a few times a year. Especially, you don't see 410 sprint cars in the state of New York as much as I think a lot of us would hope. Mm-hmm. And, we have to travel a little bit further down to Pennsylvania to see them a lot more. Mm-hmm. But between them, and I like when the ESS series comes around to all the tracks too. I've seen plenty of races of them, and they put on a show no matter where you go.
Right. On the topic of the 410s, new seat for Dave Blaney.
Yeah, I saw that. It's going to be pretty interesting to see how that turns out next year. I mean, hey, if there's anybody that can wheel a car, it's going to be him. So I'm excited to see what he can do in 2017.
Yeah, Dale Blaney going to be climbing aboard the Zemco Speed Equipment #1 down in Pennsylvania, and he's had some ebbs and flows. He lost the support from big games, so that certainly forced some changes for him. So now Dale going to be getting in that Zemco #1, and it's a good guy to have in that car, that's for sure.
Definitely.
Have you ever given any thought to getting out on tour, or are you so enamored with what they offer there at Lebanon Valley that you don't want to get away?
Well,
in addition to King on Dirt,
no matter what. But I mean, if the opportunity were to present itself for a tour to travel around to watch some more racing, I definitely have to take a good hard look into it. But one thing with always, like I mentioned before, Lebanon's always home. It always will be. So any chance I'd have to go back there, I don't think I'd turn down either.
How long did it take to get the racing show itself up on its feet with Race Pro Weekly?
Well, we started, I want to say 2011. I may have the years off. We started with kind of just a Lebanon Valley type deal, doing a recap at the end of the night, and then it kind of evolved. And then the next year is really when we put in a 30-minute show, with showing a few different tracks, and we've been picking up tracks every year. At the beginning of it, we showed a lot more support racing. It's just tough to get when you have 8 or 9 different tracks come onto the show. It's tough to get every single class on there within 30 minutes. And sure, as you know, with putting the podcast together every week, going a long time, especially with video, is not the easiest thing to do no matter what.
No, we had a lot of background in video editing with demolition derbies and stuff like that, and producing the event DVDs and stuff. And it's not an easy undertaking, and people don't realize how much time it actually takes to put into that stuff, especially when you're running multi-camera angle setups. When you're putting together something that's live to tape, it still has to be edited together, and you got to watch each of the cameras. So if you're running 3 and 4 cameras at a time, you've got to watch each of those cameras for basically each and every lap of the events that are on the track, not just the feature. You're talking about the support heats, the main class heats, the consolation rounds, and everything. Each one of those laps has to be watched. It has to be synced. It has to be then cut together so that it makes reasonable sense. And then after all that stuff is done, then you got to go back through and you got to do your voiceovers. One of the benefits in some essences is you're just looking at doing compilations and highlights, so to say. But at the same time, the challenge is you've got to tell the story of 6, 7, 8, 9 hours of racing, depending on how big the event is, in just a matter of 30 minutes from a number of different tracks. And that's one of the challenges of editing just in itself, not simply just for the DVD side of it. You got Thomas Racing Video that I'm sure you guys work very closely with, and he's going to be, Mel Thomas is going to be announcing at Outlaw Speedway on Friday nights alongside Paul Small. I saw that announcement come out over the course of the last couple of weeks. The job that those guys have to put in terms of building the overlays and building the event DVDs is remarkably taxing. And I know it was one of the challenges that we messed around with. We used to run in-car cameras with the Demolition Derby DVD stuff. So that added yet another element, because not only if it wasn't synced right, you had to find the hit that guy was making on the camera and then time it so that it worked well coming into the hit with the cameras on track and coming out of it so that it made reasonable sense. Because otherwise, your fan base is watching on a roller coaster and it's just going to give them a headache and they're not going to watch anymore.
Right, and going back to what you said, too, about the whole telling the story thing. Granted, at Albany, Saratoga, and Lebanon Valley, it's a little bit easier because I'm there each week. But, some of these races, it's a lot harder to tell a story when you got, say you get a race where one guy leads 30 laps. It's tough to really put together the story and how to make it exciting at the same time.
How often is it that you get footage without getting a race report of some sort?
Very rare. There's a couple of tracks where it's tough to find every week, but the good news is a lot of these websites track websites give out good press releases that really tell a story of what's going on. Some of them are a little bit tougher to find, but usually I can kind of get a good idea of what's going on just because I try to make it out to as many tracks as I can that are on a show at least once. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's just impossible with conflicts, but that gives me a better idea of, hey, this guy runs this car, runs this line, just give something added to say.
You said that your background was in broadcasting. Has your role with Race Pro Weekly solely been on the broadcasting side of it, or have you picked up pen and paper and done some stories for him?
I've written a few stories for him as well. Usually around Super Dirt Week when the team comes together and we put all hands on deck. We do the videos and we write. Sometimes it's just results of what happened that night. I'll write a couple columns throughout the year when the time does allow. But I do get the pen and paper a little bit. Not my forte by any stretch of imagination. I like being on camera or doing voiceovers and stuff like that. But I can pick up a pen and paper if needed. Did
Bobby track you down? Was it you said that you guys met and talked about it a couple of times? How did that meeting come to pass?
Well, he's in the middle of the pit area every Saturday night, so and we've been having conversations for a while. Then he really, really put the thing out to get to do this, and it really started before that too, when we did one of our video weekends out at Super Dirt Week, doing updates and stuff on video, mm-hmm. And then it really got into the show a little bit more as well. And when we realized, hey, we can do this every week, and we can do this with quality, and it's worked since day one.
What's the end game? I mean, you guys are getting ready for another season. You're launching again in March. It's coming back. Where's it go from here? You guys are trending well. There's a demand for the product. Where does it go from being Race Pro Weekly online? What's the next step for it?
Well, hopefully the step would be up no matter what we do. I think if maybe a few more tracks into the fold, a little different. But the one thing I'm afraid of personally is getting a little too stale with it because you know what you're getting every week. Maybe there's been ideas about a few more segments to stick in if possible in there. Because we have our last lap segment each and every time. We don't exactly call it the last lap anymore, but when we sit down and do a package about a driver, maybe some more fresh elements to the show. But right now, like you said, we definitely have something really good going, mm-hmm. And it's going to be pretty cool just to bring it back next year and see how much it'll evolve.
Was there talk that perhaps it wasn't coming back?
It is a possibility. It's tough to make that decision in December as well, because even though I know we talked about there's really no off season, at the end of the year, I'm sure I can speak for you too, we do get burnt out at times. Yeah. There's just a lot going on because it is. I think it's one of the more physically demanding sports, no matter what aspect of it you're in, because, like we said, it goes each and every week.
Right. You gonna get into any of these indoor shows?
Say that again, sorry.
You gonna do any of these indoor shows that are coming up?
Going to be tough too because of conflicts.
Yeah. That
we have going on. Because of course, I got to be at the hockey rink a lot more on Saturdays than I kind of expected at first, not thinking about the schedule ahead of time. And I've been working weekends pretty much for another job the entire racing season and into now, so it's going to be tough for me to get down to any indoor races.
Bummer. I've never been to any of those. I know a ton of people that have gone. They always say that it's something that you can't miss. Coming up here, just a couple of weeks, about a month away, the Chili Bowl. That's going to be happening out in Tulsa. The lineup for that is always incredible. I think John Balmas is going to be joining us here in a couple of weeks by phone to talk a little bit more about that because he's going to be going out there himself. That Chili Bowl is such a spectacular event. And then we're pretty fortunate being so close to Atlantic City for those events that happen there. It's something I've always wanted to do but never really had the opportunity due to conflicts and commitments that we've got up here as well. It's always fun to watch, though. You look at the highlights and you get some of the information that trickles in, and there's never a dull moment in the press releases.
No, with how short the laps are, just looking at highlights, every corner matters in those races, and I know they probably get a lot of cautions each and every time, but you're on the edge of your seat from what it's looking like if you're sitting in the arena.
How about for Race Pro Weekly as a whole? I know it's not just you and Bobby. I remember when Bobby was first getting this thing up and going. We used to talk a lot back in the it must have been the early 2000s. years ago, but since then things have grown and evolved and grown and evolved, and Race Pro Weekly is looked at as a hub for information from all walks of motorsports. It's not just dirt track, and it's not just local. There's press releases on there about Jeff Gordon going in and running the Rolex 24-hour in Daytona, and there's information about local track changes for a track like Airborne or any place else, and news about Blaney jumping into the sprint car out of Pennsylvania. There's all sorts of information from all walks of motorsports on there, but that's not an undertaking that you guys are doing alone. Who else is part of that family?
Well, it's the team that we have as a whole. There's not a team I would ask to be able to work with any more than these guys, and the reason is we all, whether it's from the photos, many people, Mike Petrucci, the McGaffin family, that gets involved, many others as well, and some of our writers each and every time that come in. We have all aspects covered, and it's amazing how far we can get and how much that's even evolved from really just starting out as just, from what I've been told anyway, in the early 2000s, just Lebanon Valley and a few tracks northeast based. It's amazing to see how much it's grown and how much it's still growing.
It is crazy how far it's come, isn't it?
The sport in general, you wouldn't think 15 years ago how much the media would have an impact on the sport, but now it's, it keeps everybody involved every day, and I think it's one of the coolest things. There's no fans more passionate than racing fans, and there's no question about that.
I can't get over how small social media has made the world, between YouTube and the fact that anybody that has a smartphone now can start generating hits off of a simple 30, 40, 50-second video that they videotape at the racetrack just by posting that to their Facebook page, or the folks that are doing stuff that's more involved, loading events to YouTube, and then from there the simple marketing that the racetracks can do in terms of reaching so many people so fast using the social media elements out there. Look at what's been done just in the early stages of motorsports involvement with Twitter, how you've got the Twitter updates, so you've got the lineup, you've got this lap, this is the reason why the caution's out. You can follow along an entire race and never hear a spoken word about it. And it's just amazing how small it's made the world. You've got people that are interested in all different walks of motorsports now that are just a matter of clicks away, that are becoming friends, sharing ideas, sharing war stories about this type of racing, that type of racing. It's really knocked down a lot of those walls that sort of divided and kept modifieds in the Northeast, and it kept sprint cars primarily down in Pennsylvania, and it kept the midgets and stuff out in their neck of the woods. It's just those walls have slowly become more and more dissolved, and it seems like the community is a whole lot smaller because of the social media stuff.
It does, and it's only going to continue to get that way, I think, with the social media in general. Because like you said, people that talk to each other all the time. I've met more people because of social media and this show over the past couple of years than I would have ever expected at a racetrack. Because you go, you have people that go over Friday night, sit with the same people, but now, they interact over, hey, this is what I think happened or at this place, or that they saw. They can continue to talk about it all week, where you may not have had that in the past.
Right. Do you run into it all in situations where somebody comes up that knows you and is your best friend, and because they've seen you on the Race Pro Weekly television show, that they're completely familiar with you and what you're into, the divisions you like, the drivers that you like, your background, and all this other stuff, and then you just have completely no idea who they are because of it? It's a one-sided conversation. They know who you are, but you can't see them watching the show.
All the time. You'd be surprised how many people, because, for example, like a lot of my classmates back in Plattsburgh used to watch the show when I was doing some of the stuff still out of there when I was there, and they couldn't tell you what, other than they were turning left 4 times. There's not too much you could really get out of them about what racing was all about.
Right.
Unfortunately.
Up there in Plattsburgh, while you were in college, did you have the chance to get to a lot of racing?
Not as much, because during Airborne, because usually you started about a month late and also, ended a month early. And even when they were running, a lot of times I was still going back and forth to Lebanon and Albany, Saratoga every week. I did get a chance to go over to Thunder Road for the Milk Bowl one time, and it was pretty cool to see. And I did get to Airborne one of the times that the dirt modifieds were on there, but I know I'm excited to possibly get back to Airborne with the dirt going back down this year too.
How far is that drive from Plattsburgh to Lebanon?
Say that again?
How far is that drive from Plattsburgh to Lebanon Valley?
Where I am, about 2.5 hours. From Lebanon, about 3:15, I want to say. And I've done it in one night, and it was not. I probably wouldn't do that straight again.
That's
at least Albany, Saratoga. It was on the way back to where my house is, so it was only about an hour 45 minutes. So by the time you get there, it's not that bad. Lebanon, though, because that's another hour 15 south, makes it a lot harder, even though it's all highway.
That's crazy, and that's crazy. You're
Hey, the things we do for racing, though, right?
God hates a coward. Got to go for it.
Absolutely.
So take me through some of your. I mean, growing up, it's one of the things that I remember fondly about working at Black Rock Speedway years ago, and having the chance to work at Canandaigua a couple times in different faculties. Be it I was working for Gator News, Ariota Racing News, or announcing for the track, whatever. Is that so many of these drivers that are still the premier top tier dirt modified drivers were the guys that I grew up watching, just like you were relating earlier. Take me through some of the memories that stuck with you from when you were a kid, growing up and watching the racing at Lebanon Valley, that you sort of got to almost relive on the media side of it now that you get to go and talk about the races. You're doing the calls for the races. You're interviewing these drivers, and these are guys that you've gone from looking at as heroes to guys that you're now on a first-name basis with.
Well, for both Albany, Saratoga, and Lebanon Valley, it's pretty much been, up until the last couple of years or so, the Tremont versus Hearn.
Right.
And you're seeing those guys go at it now. We're looking at over 20 years for me that I've seen.
Right.
It's weird still being able to talk to them after each race that they end up winning. But another thing, I used to travel. I mentioned before, my uncle was a crew chief on Stuart Briesen's car. I got to see him in his inaugural run at Utica Rome in 2004 when he won just about everything that year in the Matson car.
Right. That is pretty cool. So, I mean, have you guys...
Kind of where he's come from then till now, it's unbelievable.
Yeah, he got better, if it was possible. As dominant as he was at Utica Rome, he got better. He improved. He and Matt Shepard have come so far in that, geez, what is it? Fair to say, 10-year span?
Yeah.
That's going to be one of those battles that in 20 years... that generation's group of race fans is going to say they wish they got to see, just like we talk about, watching Treichler and Rudeman and Cagle and all those other guys that we might not have got the chance to see race. That as we talk to the generation that came before us, they said, man, you should have seen. If you think these guys are good, you should have seen them.
Right, and because the cars are so different from how they used to be, with each, it seems like, decade, you're never going to really, that argument's never going to stop at who the best is. No, there's no way to bring about an even playing field, because you're always going to be able to make the argument, this is the generation that you watched was the best. That's the way that racing has always been. The generation that you came up through watching, that was the best. And here's the 75,000 reasons why, and here is the 80,000 reasons why everybody else isn't. Albany, Saratoga, you got to spend some time watching Jack Johnson then too. A little bit growing up in the 90s, I got to see Jack go at it with Brett and Kenny and Wells, a number of other guys, because back in the 90s, you had Jeff Hetzler running there at a time. You had Alan Johnson running there at a time. It's still one of the best fields, I feel like, now on a Friday night, but back then you had just as much of a star-studded names each and every week.
Right.
And you really, even though it ended up Hearn would take a lot of them, you'd never know who was going to win when you stepped out there that night.
Right. Yeah, you brought up the name, the Jelly name. That's one that's synonymous with success out in that neck of the woods. And Andy Bacchetti. Andy Bacchetti's a guy that's won a lot of races at Albany, or excuse me, not Albany, Saratoga, Lebanon Valley. The battles that he had with Hearn for several years there in the 2007, 2009, 2010 range, those were some awesome races.
Oh, yeah. I mean, back then, I remember, and I'm trying to think of when the switch from the 4 to the 34 car was, but either way, Andy and Brett, Ken, all those guys right up at the front. You got some fast guys that want to run against the wall, although Hearn has switched to the inside a lot more lately. It's been pretty interesting just to see, because even now compared to 10 years ago, even though Hearn comes out front a lot more than we than I know a lot of fans may like to see on some nights. It's fun watching him come to the front along with those other guys as well.
Right. So you've got all this classical training. You're formally educated as a broadcaster. You have all of the polished assets of a professional, and you get to Lebanon Valley, and you're down there, and the microphone's in your hand. How hard is it to keep the race fan kid inside you from going nuts and taking over and throwing all your training out the window?
There are some nights where it gets very, very hard, and it's the same thing at Albany Saratoga as well. And some nights it just comes out and you can't control it. I'll be the first to admit it. But I know I've gotten a lot better than that since when I started in 2010, because I try and save my excitement for a big moment now.
Sure.
Regardless.
Did you ever catch yourself in one of those spots where all of a sudden you find yourself in the middle of all the people and all the cars and all the pageantry, and all of a sudden you got to ask questions, and those questions just aren't there?
It has happened a couple of times. Not recently, but a few times back. I think it was one of the big shows. I think the first one we had at Albany Saratoga, I had a little bit of trouble coming out with some questions at Victory Lane. It worked out. But, sometimes you just go off without thinking. You don't necessarily ask anything stupid, but you just completely forget what your train of thoughts are.
Right. I understand that. We were talking earlier about the Pro Stocks. This just jumped into my mind, or the support classes. Lebanon Valley's Pro Stock division has been outstanding. They've had several successful drivers come through there that have turned around and won big races in Syracuse.
There is a lot of times that we say on a Saturday night that the Pro Stock race was the best out of the classes, and they are going door to door for 20 straight laps, and you'll see the different number of winners. I know we had Jay Corbin win the most races this year, but you had a lot of guys in Victory Lane, a lot of guys that weren't in Victory Lane until a couple of years ago even, that really make it interesting. And like you mentioned, Robbie Ebben now with 4 in a row up at Super Dirt Week.
Right.
And, you'd never think you'd ever see that.
Yeah, he's pretty unstoppable right now, and he's a ton of fun to watch. And the wins that he's got up there, he's had some success, but it hasn't been cakewalks in any stretch of the imagination.
No, if I remember correctly, I think the first one, Rocky Warner, still in the Pro Stock then,
right,
was breathing down his back bumper the entire time, which made it that much better for Rob, because back then Rocky and Rob were arguably the best two in the Northeast at that time.
Sure, Rocky's still awesome to watch. Driving
God,
it's just unbelievable what that guy can do.
The Northeast Crate Nationals this year, I remember calling that race. He was sitting back at 17th at one point. All of a sudden, he was third. We had no idea where he came from.
We talked a little bit about the photographers that are contributing on a regular basis. We talked a little bit about the fans. Is there anybody else that's been part of that Race Pro group since the beginning that you wanted to make mention of, or identify, call out for their contributions over the long-term scope of what Race Pro Weekly's been able to accomplish?
I know one guy I didn't get the chance to mention yet, Ed Biedick, Fast Eddie, who we call. He's been with us every Super Dirt Week that I've been a part of, helping us out with the video team, and he contributes to the show each and every week too. He does that last segment for us, and I'll be the first to admit he's the best interviewer out of any of us on the team, and I do it each and every week, and I can safely say that. Without him, and he was a driving force of that TV show as well that I was saying that was on the local news station. So just to have him and his experience, because he's been doing this for over 20 years as well.
Yep.
And it's good to see that we all work together well, but he has been a rock with us as well throughout this entire time.
That's awesome. He's a good dude. He'll be at that Hall of Fame induction ceremony that's coming up late January, the New York State Stock Car Association Hall of Fame. They're going to be inducting media personalities Don and Joanne Davies, Billy Greco, Gary Ballou, Paul Jensen, and Dan Odie, also going to be inducted into the New York State Stock Car Association Hall of Fame coming up. Are you going to make your way up to that one?
I unfortunately do have a hockey game that night, so I am not going to be able to make it, but that's usually the night we do give out our NISCA Performer of the Year award as well, which is kind of like we call it performer for a reason, because we can throw a promoter in there, a car owner, anybody that wins it throughout each week. So we got a tough decision to make coming up to see who's going to be the winner of that, and we usually give that out at the New York State Stock Car Association banquet.
Is it even possible to get a short list together when you start looking at the course of a whole season?
It is and it's not. I mean, there's guys that went above and beyond, and I'll just throw a few names out there. You got Matt Shepard putting together his own team and still having a great season that he had. I mean, you had Stuart Friesen in general coming up with 2 out of the big 3.
Right.
Between, I've always said that just because the way the track configuration used to be. I'm going to throw Oswego in here, but, Eastern States, Mr. Dirt Track USA, and Super Dirt Week, and then Shepard winning the other one of the high money races. I mean, there's a number of guys, you got to throw Mark Johnson into there who, in a small block won the title at Albany Saratoga against Hearn and Tremont, who were running big blocks the majority of the year. So there's a number of guys you got to throw in, and I'm sure I'm not naming a lot of them. I mean, another one, Pete Bicknell, with his run at Maryville this year too.
Right.
It's a tough decision no matter what we do.
and then once you start naming the guys that stand out, it seems like that conversation always leads to the guys that are just a half step behind, which leads you to the guys that are maybe a step behind, but they did so much in the pits and they were so underfunded and they didn't have the equipment, but they were still right there in the conversation. It makes it increasingly difficult. The more you think about it, the more names you can come up with, and the hard part is you can only pick one.
Exactly. And like last year, I think we shocked a lot of people. We didn't give it to a modified driver. We went with Rocky Warner with the season he had last year, coming up with over 30 wins. I mean, how often do you see that in a sportsman?
Right.
Especially against the fields he was running against going out and traveling. I mean, he's racing against guys like Brad Rouse, Ronnie Davis III. Guys who can go into any track any given night and win.
Sure. Yeah, it's incredible where the sportsman class is right now as a whole. When you looked at before the crate motor came in, it seemed like sportsman was this weird house of cards, like maybe it was going to hold together fine, but a good gust of wind could just destroy the whole thing. And then the crate engine came in, and everybody was sort of hemming and hawing. Are these still really race cars and everything? Now look at the division. I mean, usually most tracks that you go to on a weekly basis, the sportsman is the most populous class.
It is, and I can speak for Albany Saratoga. We have 2 sportsman classes. One that gets about 35, and then we have about another 20 in what we call our limited sportsmen, which is, guys that don't have a lot of experience out there. So we get over 50 sportsmen each and every week at the Speedway, and it's unbelievable to see how many cars we get.
And they put on good races. I mean, Canandaigua has had some awesome races. Brewerton, they've had some awesome programs this year. Outlaw Speedway with their sportsman program, that was good and strong. It's a lot of fun to watch them, and everything is so balanced now. It really put a lot of it back on the driver and being able to get the car to hook up, get what power there is to the ground, and run smooth laps. It's making people drive.
It's amazing. It's the same thing. We said before about you never know in some races who's going to come up with the win. That I think is more true in the sportsman than ever. You're going to have your guys that come up and finish in the top 5 every week, but it's more momentum than anything. And seeing some of these guys that get wins you'd never expect, it's just a great feeling, especially when you get a guy that wins for the first time that's been competitive for a while.
Coming back to the hockey stuff before we wrap up here, when's your next date with the Albany Devils?
Tomorrow night they host the Utica Comets. It's a Friday-Sunday deal for this weekend. It's a lot of fun. It's a good Friday night thing, but of course, racing still be number one no matter what.
Well, I appreciate it, man. Is there anybody else that you want to make mention of before we let you go?
I got to thank my family, first of all, for getting me into the sport, because without them, I don't know what I'd do. And, same thing, Dan Martin, my partner, both Lebanon and Albany Saratoga. He's really, since I started, taking me under his wing, and I've learned a lot from him and John Stanley as well. Awesome.
Man, I appreciate you coming on a little bit, and I appreciate the work that Race Pro Weekly's put on. Congratulations on the success of the show, and Bobby, the whole crew over there, guys doing an awesome job, and it was fun to reconnect with you guys a little bit tonight.
Thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it.
You bet, man. Enjoy what you've got of an off season, and keep it up with the hockey, and maybe we'll be able to cross paths coming up next year when the racing gets started again.
Sounds good to me.
Thanks a lot, Mike. We'll see you soon.
Thank you.
There goes Mike Warren, hosting contributor to Race Pro Weekly. Good conversation. That kid is that guy right there. He's done a lot in a short amount of time, and hopefully it'd be fun to get a chance to meet up with him, just like we talked about. And then Bobby Chalmers. I've known Bobby for a long time. We sort of lost touch with each other a little bit, and Just got thinking about Race Pro Weekly and some of the other folks that are involved with motorsports. Shot him a quick message, and we were able to get Mike on the show and talk a little bit tonight about Race Pro Weekly, where it is. And you can find them on Facebook, raceproweekly.com on the internet, but they've got a great, very active Facebook page. You can find that stuff, and you can find all sorts of the other stuff that Bobby and the crew do in terms of media coverage, websites, and then, of course, the video production with the TV show. And we'll change that back. And a couple other quick headlines that we hadn't got to. Saturday, the 27th, Wild Turkey Derby was happening. Matt Hirschman took the win in that 150-lapper for the Tour Type Modifieds. Eddie Mariello and Jimmy Blewett were in the top three. News out of Oswego Speedway. It's the first time in 20 years. It's 2 decades. An Ohio Super Modified driver is going to go for Oswego's Super Modified Track Championship. Dave Schulich Jr. is going to join Nicotra Racing for a weekly run in 2017. We talked a little bit about Plattsburgh and Airborne Speedway. Super Dirt Car Series is going to go back to the newly covered 4/10 mile. That's because they've changed the surface over on that one. The first time on Thursday, July the 6th. It's kind of cool that they are going to be back up there for that one. And coming up on some more local information, Outlaw Speedway, they've shaken things up. As I said, Paul Small and Mel Thomas are going to be handling the announcing duties on a weekly basis, and they made a big splash at the Parts Peddler event at the New York State Fairgrounds a couple weeks back when they announced that all the divisions are returning. They've resurfaced the track, and, oh, yeah, they've got a handful of special events with a side pot of $40 grand. If you can win all 4 races on the schedule, it's a $40,000 bonus. It's the Insiger Performance Noco Race Fuels Modified Challenge. Anybody winning the Outlaw Spring Nationals, the Jeff Strolls Memorial, the MRO Celebrity Night, and the Hogue Memorial can win an extra $40,000. If you win 3 of the 4, you get $20 grand extra. The key is that it's only open to weekly competitors. The track's going to open on the 20th and 21st of April with the Spring Nationals, the Empire Super Sprints, URC, and Patriot Sprint Tour going in hand for an open 360 race that weekend, along with the Crate Sportsman, the late models, IMCA's 4-cylinders. The Sears Memorial is June 16th. It falls in line with the mid-season championship, and the Patriot Sprints are going to be on hand along with the bicycle giveaway. MRO night planned for August the 4th. That's the 360 sprints on the card with that one. Fall Nationals is set for September 22nd and 23rd. That's got $5,000 to win 360 Sprint Series Challenge with the Patriot Sprint Tour, URC, and ESS, and the IOC Empire Series, Grit Sportsman, and more. And then that leads us to their year-end conclusion on October 20th and 21st. $7,000 to win Modifieds at the Dutch Hogue 777 weekend. $3,000 to win Empire Super Sprint, Patriot Sprint Tour, Open Challenge event, Crate Late Models, Street Stock Empire 100, IMCA, Sportsman 4-cylinders, and 600 sprints. That event was condensed into 1 day of action this year. This coming 2017 season, it is going to go back to a 2-day format. Sportsman drivers, they expect 750 to win in 2017 over there at Outlaw Speedway. Jump online, outlawspeedwayllc.com. Steve Poirier was officially recognized as the with his 7th Empire Super Sprint Championship, $10,000 plus going home with him, along with hardware. He won 9 times in the top 10-20 of the 21 starts that he made with the SS. Not a bad season. In all, $84,000 in total payout was done at that ESS banquet. $50,000 in cash, and that was the highest in the 34-year history. Other award winners, Jason Barney was second, and Paul Kinney was third in points. Barney, he was second in almost every point standing category that the Empire Super Sprints had. They've got all their sub-series and special challenges and things. Barney was a force all year long. Parker Evans, he was fifth in the points. He collected several special awards, such as the Pilot Graphic Design Most Improved Award, Cobra Coaches Dash Series Champion, 9/11 Restoration Point Championship. He took home over $5,000 on the night. And the John Zentner Memorial Award went to Randy Mallett and Mike Mallett, of course, with Dirt Track Digest's Empire Super Sprints and 31st Lap fame. He was able to recognize his dad with that award, so that was pretty cool. The ESS Hall of Fame included Lance Young, Mike Van Dusen, and let's see, make sure we're not missing anybody. Matt Tanner coming away with 4th place overall in the point standings. They've already started working on the 2017 season. You can jump online, EmpireSuperSprints.com, for details on that one. If you can believe it, tickets are already on sale for Super Dirt Week 2017 at Oswego. You can just find those by calling 844-DIRT-TIX. That's 844-DIRT-TIX. If you need the digits, 347-8849. That's 844-347-8849. I think we've covered everything that we wanted to. News broke after, in conjunction with the Dirt Banquet, where Matt Shepard was recognized with his 5th Super Dirt Car Series championship, that Tim Fuller and Dave Roush are going to part ways, and Tim Fuller is being hired as the mentor, so to say, to Cody Graham. Cody Graham, he's 25 years old. His dad is Ray Graham, who's done an outstanding job fielding super modifieds. Now Cody going to turn his attention to running dirt cars. Fuller's going to maintain his cars, and then Cody's going to have his own stuff. And the goal is to eventually build a shop where everything is kept under one roof. But they got together, they ran some laps a little bit. And Fuller said that he kind of liked what he saw, and Cody's getting a feel for the car. So we'll have to keep an eye on that as that evolves through the course of 2017. And they got an owner that's focused on winning, Tim said. So you know what? Hard to argue with that. Tim did pretty well at Canandaigua Motorsports Park this year, and then we saw him pick up a dominant 358 championship win at Super Dirt Week up at Oswego Speedway. Wow, that was a fast 45 minutes. I think that's going to stick a fork in it for this one. We are going to be back in 2 weeks. We're not here on the 8th. We're going to be back on the 15th. And Final Round podcast will be airing on the 8th and the 22nd before we take the week off. No, we might not be there on the 22nd. I got to double check that date. So Final Round coming up next week on the 8th of December, and then 31st Lap is going to be back on the 15th. That is going to do it for us here at the Finger Lakes 1.com studio here in Seneca Falls. We appreciate everybody watching and hanging out with us for a little while. Special thanks to Bobby Chalmers, Race Pro Weekly, and Mike Warren for making some time to come and hang out with us and talk a little bit about what they do. And we'll be back here in just a couple weeks. We'll see you then.